It's time for the Oscars, and we're here to hand out the awards. There's Best Actor in a Box, Most Surprising Actor in a Lead Role, Best Performance by a Jedi, and Best Film that hasn't been made yet. La 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 Land. It's Oscars weekend. Time for Hollywood to give itself a pat on the back, and time for the rest of us to be reminded that there is a reason why the movie industry chose Southern California to live and film in. And with the whole of glamorous LA to choose from, they've put me in a box, in a warehouse. Although it is the coolest box I've been in for a while, because, spoiler alert, I'm not really in the box. I'm out here. And that's virtual me. And it's called Portal. The box itself is real, of course, and the lights inside it provide the illumination for the modified, human-sized 4K LCD screen on the front. This can show pre-recorded video or live images of some loon messing about in front of a camera. What am I doing over there, though? What's he doing? The same? Oh, yeah, of course. And I have to say, I am impressed.
I figured out all these reasons why somebody might not want to do a hologram, and I've eliminated all those reasons. So that's why we developed this.
And David's right. While I've certainly had some fun with so-called holograms over the years, they've all needed huge setups with precisely placed projectors, enormous pieces of semi-reflective glass or giant meshes, and pretty dark environments to allow the images to stand out. This one, though, is compact, portable, and really bright. First things first, these are not holograms. You know what I think about the term hologram, but these are the most realistic not holograms I think I've ever seen. The key is that this bit of the screen is transparent, so if the camera moves to the left and the right, you can see the backgrounds move behind the character, and it really gives you that feeling that they really are there, that this is a 3D image. The small piece of reflective floor and the shadow of the performer are also captured and sent to the booth, something that really adds to the realism. Yeah, it's a thumbs up from me, really. He's not too happy though. Oh yeah, he is.
Send in the clowns.
With The Joker leading the Oscar pack this weekend with 11 nominations, it's not hard to see how the right kind of character inside one of these devices could have a film's marketing department going nuts.
I'd like to see every cardboard cutout standee in every movie theater lobby replaced with a hologram portal. I'd like to go to a museum and then hologram Einstein asks me what question I have for him. Or I could beam the next president of the United States from his or her own campaign office into all 50 states at the exact same time, with the ability to hear, see, and interact with the audience that they're beaming in front of in real time.
And David has another project on the go, which is not live. Pretty much exactly the opposite, in fact.
One of the most famous things about the hologram industry is bringing back the dead, digital resurrections. Guys like Tupac and now Whitney, and these are people that all never gave their consent while they were alive, but they've all become super famous holograms in death. And what we're doing is we filmed about a half a dozen of the world's most famous icons while they're alive so that they could do the performance that they want to do. They hold the microphone the way they hold the microphone. They sing the songs the way they want to sing the songs. It's not a body double and a CGI head. It's really them. Makes it less macabre, makes it easier for the audience to get behind, and we've stuck them on a hard drive in a cupboard somewhere so that when the time comes, we could then go access that content and then send them on tour.
And actually, that idea is where we're going next, because there is currently a trend in resurrecting dead celebrities. The technology exists to put convincing CGI versions of actors into films, and it's raising a lot of issues.
You're tearing me apart!
What?
Did you know that James Dean only ever made 3 movies before his death in a car accident in 1955? Did you also know that after his death, his image rights have been handled by Mark Rossler at CMG Worldwide?
A boy, a kid was killed tonight.
His memory, his image, his values still resonate with young people around the world struggling to understand themselves as teenagers and the rebel personality of James Dean. So it's always been important for the family that future generations remember who James Dean was.
Managing the business affairs of dead celebrities may sound unusual, but it means that their estates get royalties from any paraphernalia that features their faces. And these days, that doesn't just mean mugs.
We essentially want to bring James Dean back so that he is an option for storytellers and for content creators to use him for traditional film, virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, spatial computing, gaming, music, branded content.
And the first James Dean project will see a virtual version of this screen icon co-star in a Vietnam War film called Finding Jack.
So our intention is to put together a 3D virtual James Dean using all of the historical data, images, and pictures and video that we've had over the course of the last 64 years.
We've watched motion and facial capture technology mature over the last 15 years or so, and it's now completely possible to capture an actor's performance and map their movements and expressions onto a different digital being. It's created monsters. It's made Robert De Niro and Will Smith young again. And it's even allowed a film's production to continue after its star's untimely death. But the James Dean project takes this idea to a different level, using a celebrity's likeness not because the story demands it, but because some dead celebrities are bankable.
It's not like you're creating a brand new virtual being from scratch where you have to spend ample amount of capital to create the awareness for him. People know James Dean. He's an icon.
But this is much more than just blending old, existing footage into new scenes. This needs to be a completely flexible, 3D, photorealistic, fully animatable, believable version of a person that can act in new scenes and deliver new dialogue. And we humans might accept CGI monsters, but we're biologically wired to spot any hint of a fake human. They just look wrong, they break the realism, and they end up firmly in what's known as the uncanny valley.
As I've learned about visual effects, a big part of creating that illusion is what you're asking it to do and how much time you're giving your artist to refine the work. Oftentimes it's rushed, oftentimes it's being asked to do things that the technology doesn't deliver well.
Previous attempts at CGI actors have been mixed, and I wonder whether there's a certain quality threshold that you or James Dean's estate, for example, has to insist on.
Our expectations are very high. So the virtual assets that we create will evolve over time. This isn't a one-time, and it's perfect. It's going to evolve. So our James Dean that we will release for this movie may be a little different than the James Dean we release at a later date.
But of course there's more to an actor than just their face. That's just one part of the entire performance package.
If you're going to pick an actor and put them into something new, you have to find some reference for them. You either get another actor to do it, then how much is it then their performance rather than the actor you're recreating? Or do you try and just take stuff from things that they've already done, but then it's not original? So it's a bit of a minefield, I think.
And unsurprisingly, some actors have themselves expressed their annoyance.
I don't think this is going to be replacing actors that are alive because they have talent that nobody can achieve unless you're physically alive to be able to make those adjustments on the fly. But I also think working with virtual stars and virtual beings does make it somewhat easier to release and market content in the future. Sometimes it is very easy to use a digital asset to promote what you're trying to get viewers to see versus hiring actors to promote content that costs additional capital.
So basically you said that living actors, human actors, are a bit of a pain, and you'd rather work with avatars.
To some extent. It's easy to work with deceased celebrities.
Hello and welcome to The Week in Tech. It was the week that Uber received a permit which could allow its self-driving cars back onto California roads for testing, nearly 2 years after a fatal accident in Arizona. The UK government is bringing a ban on petrol, diesel and hybrid car sales forward from 2040 to 2035. And Google's location data tracking is now under a probe by a European regulator. It says it will establish if Google was operating legally and with due transparency. Meanwhile, an artist in Berlin tricked Google Maps into saying there was a traffic jam by dragging a wagon of smartphones around the streets. Simon Weckert searched for directions in the Maps app on 99 second-hand mobile devices before hitting the streets, wheeling the handsets past Google's German headquarters. Scientists have successfully tested a device that prints a bio-ink skin onto wounds. This artificial skin, which was first tested on pigs, is now a step closer to use in human burn clinics. Scientists in Israel have developed a tiny tank-like robot that can transform shape to step up and over obstacles. The reconfigurable continuous track robot uses just 3 motors to flex its body on a link-by-link basis to build its own track in the air. And finally, a 125-year-old film of a train has had an AI update. YouTuber Denis Shiryaev used neural networks to scale the famous Lumiere Brothers short into 4K so crisp it could have been shot by a modern smartphone.
Oh, Jenny, you are so cute. She is said to be the world's most realistic robotic animal, and I can tell you, she feels pretty real. That nose almost feels wet and a little bit squidgy. And these dementia patients at Las Vegas's prestige senior living facility seemed pretty pleased to meet her.
You're a good dog.
She's awesome. You look real. Look at those teeth. What's wrong? I can't help you.
Jim Henson's Creature Shop was responsible for the lifelike look, feel, movements and behaviour that have been built on top of this sensor-embedded, voice-controllable bot.
There's a great deal of research on the benefits of live animal therapy for seniors with dementia. It helps soothe the behavioral and psychological symptoms and reduces their need for certain medications. The problem is many seniors can no longer safely care for or have a live animal around them. With the robotic animals, it's important to introduce them early in the disease progression so that they have the cognitive abilities to form that attachment, so when they're later stage in their dementia progression, that the animal is already something that they turn to for comfort.
It's a dog. I thought it was a real dog.
This is really quite a strange experience because the dog does almost feel real and sound real, and everybody seems to be feeling that. But is that right?
There are people that, despite explaining to them that it's a robot, actually still believe that it's a real dog. We've looked at that from an ethical perspective, and we're very concerned about not tricking them. But on the other hand, if it's giving them comfort, that's really the goal. They like to suspend disbelief. They like to be able to relate to it as if it's a long-lost pet that they might have known in an earlier time.
Well, I'd like to have you. Yeah, I'd let you sleep in bed with me.
And she could be solving a problem here that's already been identified.
We started a while back having dogs come into our community because we felt like the dogs were a method of helping with loneliness and what we found is that we have to pay just as much attention to the dogs as we do the human.
She likes you.
Does she ever not like people?
She doesn't. She usually likes everybody.
Okay, that's relief. Bad to design a robot dog that doesn't like people. Of course, not everyone loves dogs, though.
What we find is actually the barking behavior in a real dog or in the robot triggers that fear response. And so one of the things that we can do in the setup of the robot is turn off the barking behaviors.
Yes, this rechargeable robotic dog's behaviour is customisable via a smartphone app. But there are pros and cons to the whole thing. Just before we started filming, she had to be rebooted, and it was really quite disturbing as she temporarily died. She clearly did bring joy, though, and I could see the benefit of her being designed to sit on laps or raised surfaces rather than creating a tripping hazard on the floor. Other breeds and a cat are in development, but I was left with one real issue. I feel really bad we have to take her away from them.
Now, recently, we've seen artificial intelligence start to outperform humans in very specific tasks. But could AI ever predict a film's success better than the people who work here? Well, that's the question that Mark Chislak asked. And this is the answer.
Nobody knows anything. So said legendary screenwriter William Goldman, who was talking about the movie business and how incredibly difficult it is to predict hits. That's why we end up with films like reimagined Robin Hood.
Really inspiring. Thanks.
And Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Both absolute stinkers.
Damn right.
In the movie game, predicting blockbusters is more art than science. Tech company Synalytics thinks it's cracked the cash-creating cinematic code. It claims its AI can help predict a movie's success at the box office before it goes into production.
I think when you say, AI making decisions about film, people get a bit edgy because they start thinking about robot directors or computers making artistic decisions, and that's not what's really happening here. It's very much about the business side of the film industry.
I caught up with Synalytics CEO at the company's Hollywood office. Up here we have an example movie, Detective Pikachu.
Whoa. Did you just understand me?
Oh my God, you can understand me!
So very quickly, you can add a project, just enter basic information, logline synopsis.
Looks like the kind of thing that you might see on IMDb.
That's your project, what's the estimated budget, what's the rating, the genre, the keywords. So all these factors are very important because they kind of determine how valuable the project is.
Okay.
And from there we build different tools that you can use to evaluate that film now. Detective Pikachu's voice, of course, Ryan Reynolds. Mm-hmm. And so here you could also run and compare Ryan to different potential comedians or comedy actors that might be suitable for that role.
Pika, 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 he's adorable.
You're adorable. They can't understand me, kid.
Using some of the system's tools, we can play a movie version of fantasy football, changing around elements like the casting. Depending on the ingredients we provide it with, the system predicts the chances of financial success. Let's try somebody who's a big name at the moment and would probably be all right for this film. So, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Okay, let's go and put Dwayne in here. Press the button. And now the system, otherwise everything stayed the same, will recalculate. And as you can see, it predicts there's more revenue.
Are we in hell? I knew it.
Oh my God.
Let's recast with Dame Judi Dench.
Oh, it drops quite a bit.
I haven't seen you before, have I?
So all of your data is effectively based on things that have already happened.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens when it comes to the wildcard movies? Something that comes completely out of nowhere that nobody could have predicted and caught everybody by surprise. What happens in those circumstances?
They still call people by surprise. Outliers are outliers. They're called outliers because they don't happen very often, right? It's like 5%, 3% of these movies actually are part of that group of outliers that everybody keeps talking about, but in reality, they're actually a very slim minority.
Synalytics are adamant humans are still in the mix and that its software is an additional assistive tool for movie moguls. This is based on hard numbers. This is the business side of the industry. What about the scripts? What about, is there anything out there that will tell you whether a script is good or not?
I don't think there's anything out there that can tell you if the script is good, especially not qualitatively good, because right now,
This is stuff
AI,
that machines aren't good at doing.
exactly, AI cannot understand whether a script is particularly good.
The company's recently penned a deal with Warner Brothers, but the studio insists the machine learning software will be used in the marketing and distribution side of things. As far as Hollywood studios are concerned, humans remain in the picture. For now.
We're gonna do this, you and me.
Really interesting stuff, isn't it? That was Mark Chislak, and of course this weekend is Oscar weekend, so we'll know very soon which films did well this year. We've been looking at some of the best in breed in the VFX category, and here's our final nominee.
Long have I waited. Confronting fear, it's the destiny of a Jedi.
Bringing Carrie Fisher back was an incredibly kind of tiered problem, and I thought it was going to be difficult, and actually I didn't really appreciate how complicated it was going to be.
No, you can't do it for me.
What we did was we built this enormous matrix of all the performances of Carrie Fisher from 7 and 8, and then essentially figured out all the lines she said, and then JJ and Chris Terrio wrote the script around those lines. And the way that we chose to do it is for each of her performances, we cut out her face so that it's Carrie Fisher playing Princess Leia. We cut out her face, and then we built a digital Princess Leia around the face.
Hair and costume.
Costume, exactly. Which meant, of course, she could have a new hairstyle, she could have a new costume for this movie, which would make her feel very unique to this particular project. And then I think the other thing that we worked very hard to achieve was the fact that she was interacting with elements within the scene or other actors. You know, she walks past, there's one moment where she walks past Rey and says, never underestimate a droid, you know. So those kinds of interactions were absolutely key, I think, to make the audience believe that she was really there at that moment.
Look at that fleet.
There was about 16,000 Galaxy ships turned up to save the day. It's not just a matter of building the ships, but you have to design them, and you can't design 16,000 ships. I mean, well, you can, but it would take a very, very long time.
We'd still be doing it now.
Yeah, and for the foreseeable future. What we did was James Klein, who was the art director on the show for us, he and his team designed a whole bunch of ships, and then we modeled those. And then the guys wrote some computer programs that basically then made up ships from those component parts. Because of the enormous amount of work involved in the detail of what we do, is we try and sketch out a simple version of the idea. So it's sort of so that everyone understands what the general idea of the moment might be. And we can do a lot of those things using more physically based ideas. So for example, we know that when an explosion happens, there's a certain amount of force involved and certain things happen. And when you see explosions that we're doing now, they're actually based upon real physical burn rates of material, you know, how quickly an explosion might expand and what force that would have. So a lot of that stuff looks more real because it's actually simulating a real event. You know, the weird thing is we just want to make our work vanish, you know, and for people to be unaware of it and for people to really believe that everything in the movie is actually happening.
The Force will be with you.
Always.
And we wish all of the nominees the very best of luck, of course. That's it from us from Hollywood. If you'd like to join us throughout the week, you know where to find us. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram and Twitter at BBC Click. And we'll see you soon.